Hi guys and welcome to Crazy Pepper Revenge. This channel is all about crazy true stories, stuff that happens in real life when things get a little bit messy.
The kitchen sink had been dripping for 3 weeks, and naturally, I was fixing it at midnight while my wife was supposedly at her faculty retreat. Funny how life works. The moment you think you've got everything under control, the universe decides to flush your assumptions down the drain along with your marriage. I'm Cal Porter, by the way. 38 years old, former campus security turned handyman, married to the most manipulative woman in New England. At least, that's what I discovered tonight, when Elise crept through our front door like a teenager sneaking past curfew. Cal, what are you doing up? Her voice carried that fake sweetness she used when she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. I didn't look up from the wrench in my hands. Fixing what's broken, my usual hobby. How was the retreat, honey? The silence stretched long enough for me to count 3 more drips from the faucet. When I finally turned around, Elise stood frozen in the doorway, her face pale as fresh paint. She clutched her overnight bag like a shield. The retreat was canceled, last-minute thing. Canceled? I wiped my hands on the dish towel, taking my sweet time. That's interesting, because I called the hotel around 9 to surprise you with room service. They said no faculty retreat was booked there. In fact, they said they haven't hosted a university event in 6 months. Elise's bag slipped from her fingers and hit the floor with a thud that echoed through our suddenly very quiet house. Cal, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You've always been creative with explanations. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. But before you start spinning another story, you might want to know that your best friend Sasha left her scarf in Jeremy's car. The same Jeremy who's been texting you at all hours. The same Jeremy whose apartment you've been visiting when you thought I was working late jobs. The color drained completely from her face now. Elise had always prided herself on being smarter than everyone else, especially me. She worked in university HR, surrounded herself with professors and administrators, made sure everyone knew she'd married beneath her station. But right now, she looked like a kid caught stealing cookies. Maybe we should take a break, she said, trying to regain her composure. Some time apart to figure things out. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I nodded thoughtfully. You're absolutely right. We should take a break. In fact, let's make it permanent. Your things will be at the door in an hour. That's when she panicked. Really panicked. The mask slipped completely, and I saw something I'd never seen before in my wife's eyes. Genuine fear. Cal, wait. Let's talk about this. I made a mistake, but we can work through it. We've been together for 8 years. That has to count for something. It did count for something. Right up until you decided Jeremy Linwood was more interesting than your boring handyman husband. She flinched at hearing his name. How long have you known? Long enough to do some research. Did you know Jeremy's engaged? Nice girl named Amanda. Works at the art museum downtown. I wonder what she'd think about her fiancé's extracurricular activities. Elise sank into one of our kitchen chairs, her perfectly styled hair falling across her face. What do you want from me, Cal? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's the beauty of it. I turned back to the sink, testing the faucet. The dripping had stopped. At least I'd fixed one problem tonight. There's just one more thing, I said, not turning around. Sasha's phone auto-backed up to the cloud when she connected to Jeremy's Wi-Fi. Apparently, she's been documenting your little adventure for posterity. Some very interesting videos ended up in a shared folder that I now have access to. The chair scraped against the floor as Elise stood up abruptly. You wouldn't. I finally turned to face her, and for the first time in months, I smiled. Really smiled. Elise, sweetheart, you've spent 8 years underestimating me. What makes you think I'd stop now? After she left that night, and she did leave, taking only what she could carry, I went up to our bedroom and found the box, hidden behind her winter coats, tucked away like a guilty secret. Inside were gifts from Jeremy, expensive jewelry I'd never seen her wear, a silk scarf that probably cost more than I made in a week, and a handwritten note that made my blood run cold. You deserve so much more than him. Soon you won't have to pretend anymore, Jay. I sat on our bed, my bed now, and read that note 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my wallet. She was right. She did deserve more than me, and so did he. And I was going to make sure they both got exactly what they deserved. Ray Hutchins had been my best friend since high school, and after 20 years, he still thought the solution to every problem could be found at the bottom of a beer bottle. Tonight, as I sat across from him in the Rusty Anchor, our local dive bar, I was starting to think he might be right. So let me get this straight, Ray said, gesturing with his third Budweiser. Your wife's been screwing around with some professor, and instead of kicking his A, you're planning what, psychological warfare? Something like that. I took a sip of my beer, savoring the bitter taste. Jeremy Linwood thinks he's smarter than everyone else. Elise thinks she can manipulate her way out of anything. They're both about to learn otherwise. Ray leaned back in his booth, studying me with bloodshot eyes. You know, Cal, in all the years I've known you, I've never seen you like this. Usually you're the calm one, the guy who thinks everything through. Now you look like you're planning to burn down half the town. Not half the town, just two very specific people's lives. The rusty anchor was perfect for this conversation. Dark, loud, and full of locals who minded their own business. The kind of place where university people never set foot, which meant I could plan without worrying about word getting back to Elise or Jeremy. All right, Ray said, leaning forward. I'm in. What do you need? That's why Ray had been my friend for 2 decades. No judgment, no lectures about taking the high road, just loyalty. I need information. Jeremy drinks here sometimes, right? Usually on Thursday nights when he thinks he's slumming it with the locals. Yeah, he comes in with that group of young professors. Acts like he's doing us a favor by gracing us with his presence. Tips like crap, too. Perfect. What else do you know about him? Ray scratched his beard, thinking, drives that fancy silver Audi? Parks it right out front like he's showing off. Always talks about his research, something about modern American literature, and he's been bragging lately. Bragging about what? About how easy it is to steal a wife from a loser. The beer bottle cracked in my grip. I looked down, surprised to see red fluid on my knuckles where the glass had cut me. Easy there, butcher, Ray said, handing me a napkin. Save some fight for the actual enemy. I wrapped the napkin around my hand, thinking. Jeremy's car was his pride and joy. A lease he probably couldn't really afford, but it made him feel important. And if he was bragging about stealing my wife, Ray, do you still have that friend who works at the campus security office? Tommy? Yeah, why? I need to know Jeremy's schedule. When he's on campus, when he's not. And I need to know where he parks that Audi. Ray grinned. Now you're talking my language. 2 days later, I was crouched behind Jeremy's car in the university parking lot at 11 p.m., a bucket of fish guts from Ray's weekend fishing trip in one hand and a screwdriver in the other. The campus was mostly empty except for a few graduate students burning the midnight oil in the library. I'd done my homework. Jeremy always stayed late on Tuesdays, working in his office until around midnight. His car would sit in this lot, unguarded and vulnerable, for at least an hour. The fish guts went into the air conditioning intake vent. The smell would take weeks to get out, and every time Jeremy turned on his air conditioning, he'd be reminded that someone was watching him, someone who didn't appreciate his extracurricular activities. The screwdriver took care of 2 tires, not slashing them, which would be obvious vandalism, but loosening the valve stems just enough to create a slow leak. By morning, Jeremy would have 2 flat tires and no idea why. As I worked, I thought about that note I'd found in Elise's closet. You deserve so much more than him. The arrogance of it. The casual dismissal of 8 years of marriage, of a life we'd built together. Jeremy saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to be removed. He was about to learn that obstacles sometimes fight back. I finished with the car and was packing up my supplies when I heard voices approaching. 2 students, walking across the parking lot, deep in conversation about some party they'd just left. I crouched lower behind the Audi, waiting for them to pass. Did you see that post on Campus Confessions? One of them said. Which one? The one about the professor who's been hooking up with married women. Someone posted a blind item about it. They called him the tenure-track homewrecker. My blood ran cold. I hadn't posted anything yet. Someone else was playing this game. Do they know who it is? The second student asked. Not yet, but people are trying to figure it out. Someone said they saw Professor Linwood's car parked outside the Marriott last weekend when he was supposed to be at a conference. They walked away, their voices fading into the night. I sat back on my heels, thinking. Someone else knew about Jeremy and Elise. Someone else was stirring the pot. The question was, friend or enemy? I got my answer the next morning when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We should talk. Meet me at Duncan on Main Street at 2 p.m. Come alone. A friend. I stared at the message for a long time, then deleted it. But I knew I'd be there at 2 o'clock. Curiosity was going to eliminate this cat. But at least I'd die knowing who else wanted to see Jeremy Linwood burn. The woman sitting in the corner booth at Dunkin' Donuts was not what I'd expected. Mid-20s, blonde, expensively dressed, with the kind of manicured appearance that screamed money and education. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw something familiar in her eyes. The same cold anger that had been eating at me for days. "Cal Porter?" she asked as I approached her table. "That's me. And you are?" "Amanda Morrison, Jeremy's fiancée." I sat down across from her, suddenly understanding everything. "How long have you known?" "About your wife? 3 weeks. About the others? 6 months." Others, plural. My stomach dropped. "Jeremy has a type," Amanda continued, her voice steady despite the pain in her eyes. "Married women, usually a little older, always connected to the university somehow. Your wife is just the latest in a long line. Why haven't you left him?" Amanda smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Because I want him to pay first, and I think you might be able to help me with that." She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Photos, emails, text messages, credit card receipts, everything you need to destroy him completely. The question is, are you interested in a partnership? I looked at the envelope, then at Amanda's face. She was beautiful, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless. Jeremy had no idea what kind of enemy he'd made. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. "Total humiliation. Public, complete, and permanent. By the time we're done with Jeremy Linwood, he won't be able to show his face in this town again." I picked up the envelope and opened it. The first photo showed Jeremy with a woman I didn't recognize, kissing in what looked like a hotel room. The second showed him with another woman, this one in his office. The third showed him with Elise, taken through the window of his apartment. "Jesus," I whispered. "That's just the beginning," Amanda said. "I've been documenting everything, every lie, every betrayal, every moment of his pathetic double life. The only question is, how far are you willing to go?" I looked up at her, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt something that wasn't anger or pain. I felt hope. "As far as it takes," I said. The plan Amanda and I hatched was beautiful in its simplicity. Jeremy thought he was untouchable, protected by his position at the university and his carefully crafted image as the charming, intellectual playboy. What he didn't realize was that his entire life was built on a foundation of lies, and we were about to pull out every supporting beam. It started with the campus gossip blog. Campus Confessions was run by some anonymous student with too much time and a talent for stirring up drama. They posted blind items about professors, administrators, and students, usually harmless stuff about who was dating whom or which professor was rumored to be getting divorced. But they also had a massive following, and in a small college town, that kind of reach was powerful. Amanda had contacts everywhere. Her father was a major donor to the university, which meant she'd grown up around these people. She knew which professors were having affairs, which administrators were embezzling money, and which students were selling drugs. More importantly, she knew how to feed information to Campus Confessions without being traced. The first post went up on a Wednesday morning. Blind item. Which married professor in the English department has been using university resources to wine and dine married women around town? Sources say he's got a whole rotation going, and at least 3 wives have fallen for his sensitive intellectual act. Word is, one of the husbands is starting to catch on. Stay tuned, patriots. This one's going to get messy. By noon, the post had 300 comments. Students and faculty were speculating wildly about which professor it could be. Jeremy's name came up in the comments, but so did half a dozen others. The beauty of it was that Jeremy couldn't defend himself without looking guilty. I was installing new cabinets in a professor's office when I got the text from Amanda. Phase 1 complete. Ready for Phase 2? Phase 2 is where things got personal. That Thursday night, I waited in the parking lot behind the Rusty Anchor, knowing Jeremy would show up around 9 with his usual crew of young professors. Amanda had confirmed his routine, drinks with colleagues, then back to his apartment, usually with whatever woman he was currently pursuing. Tonight, that woman was my wife. I'd positioned myself behind a dumpster with a clear view of Jeremy's Audi. The fish guts from earlier in the week had done their job. I could smell the car from 20 feet away, and Jeremy had been driving with his windows down despite the October chill. At 9:15, Jeremy emerged from the bar, laughing loudly at something one of his companions had said. He was wearing his usual uniform, expensive jeans, a button-down shirt that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. and a leather jacket that screamed, "I'm too cool for this place." His friends headed toward their own cars, calling out goodbyes and promises to meet up again soon. Jeremy walked toward his Audi, keys jingling in his hand, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. I waited until he was alone, then stepped out from behind the dumpster. "Jeremy Linwood?" He spun around, startled. In the dim light of the parking lot, it took him a moment to recognize me. "Do I know you?" "Cal Porter, Elise's husband." The color drained from his face. He took a step backward, bumping into his car. "Look, man, I don't know what you think is going on. I think you've been screwing my wife for the past 3 months. I think you've been telling her she deserves better than me. And I think you've been bragging to your buddies about how easy it is to steal a wife from a loser." Jeremy's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He was used to being the smartest person in the room, the one with all the clever comebacks. But standing in a dark parking lot, facing a husband he'd wronged, all that intellectual superiority evaporated. "Cal, right? Look, these things happen. Adults have complicated relationships. Maybe we can work something out." I took a step closer. Jeremy pressed himself against his car. "Here's what's going to happen, Jeremy. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stop returning her calls. And you're going to find a new hobby that doesn't involve destroying other people's marriages. And if I don't," I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Then you'll find out just how creative a bored handyman can be." Jeremy tried to push past me, but I caught his arm. Not hard enough to hurt him, but firm enough to make my point. "We're not done talking, Professor." That's when Jeremy made his first mistake. He tried to pull away, lost his balance, and stumbled backward into the dumpster. The lid was open, and he went in head first, landing in a pile of garbage from the restaurant. I didn't push him. I didn't touch him. He fell entirely on his own. But the 3 college students who had just emerged from the bar didn't know that. "Oh my God, did you see that?" one of them shouted, already pulling out her phone. Jeremy struggled to climb out of the dumpster, his expensive clothes now covered in coffee grounds and food scraps. The students were laughing, recording everything, already uploading it to their social media accounts. "This is going to be everywhere," one of them said gleefully. Jeremy finally extracted himself from the garbage, his face red with humiliation and rage. "You did this on purpose," he hissed at me. "Did what?" "I was just trying to have a conversation." "You're the one who can't stay on your feet." The students were still filming, still laughing. Jeremy looked around desperately, realizing that his carefully cultivated image was being destroyed in real time, broadcast to hundreds of followers who would share it with hundreds more. "Delete those videos," he demanded, turning to the students. "No way, dude. This is comedy gold." Jeremy started toward them, but I stepped in his path. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Professor. Threatening students? That's the kind of thing that gets you fired." He stared at me with pure hatred, understanding for the first time that he was completely outmaneuvered. The students were already walking away, probably posting the video to every platform they could think of. By morning, Jeremy's dumpster dive would be viral. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "You're right," I replied. "It's not." I walked away, leaving Jeremy standing in the parking lot, reeking of garbage and humiliation. Behind me, I could hear him trying to start his car, the engine turning over reluctantly. The fish guts were really doing their job. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Just saw the video. Beautiful work. Ready for phase 3? I looked back at Jeremy, still struggling with his car, and smiled. Phase 3 was going to be the most fun yet. By Friday morning, Jeremy's dumpster dive had been viewed over 10,000 times across various social media platforms. The video had been shared, remixed, and turned into memes. Someone had even added a soundtrack, Another One Bites the Dust by Queen. But that was just the appetizer. The main course was about to be served. Amanda met me at a coffee shop across town, looking like she hadn't slept in days. There were dark circles under her eyes, but her smile was sharp as a blade. "Jeremy called me 17 times last night," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. 17. He wanted to know if I'd seen the video, if I knew who you were, if I thought this would affect his tenure review. What did you tell him? Nothing. I didn't answer. She pulled out her phone and showed me the screen, but I did forward all his messages to Dr. Patricia Henley. I knew that name. Dr. Henley was the head of the English department, Jeremy's boss, and by all accounts, a no-nonsense woman who didn't tolerate drama among her faculty. How do you know Dr. Henley? She and my mother serve on the museum board together. They've been friends for years. Amanda's smile widened. Henley has very strong opinions about faculty members who bring negative attention to the department. And Jeremy's dumpster dive qualifies as negative attention? That's not all she's going to be concerned about. Amanda reached into her purse and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were printouts of emails, text messages, and what looked like financial records. Jeremy's been using his university credit card for his extracurricular activities, she explained. Dinners, hotel rooms, gifts for his various conquests. It's all here, documented and dated. The university takes a very dim view of faculty members who misuse institutional resources. I flipped through the papers, amazed at the level of detail. How did you get all this? I've had access to Jeremy's email and financial accounts for months. He's not very good with passwords. He uses the same one for everything. She leaned back in her chair, looking satisfied. The beauty of it is that everything I've collected is completely legal. We were engaged, living together, sharing expenses. I had legitimate access to all of this. And now Dr. Henley has a complete picture of Jeremy's behavior, the affairs, the misuse of university funds, the negative publicity. She's calling an emergency faculty meeting for Monday morning. I felt a surge of admiration for Amanda. She was thorough, patient, and absolutely ruthless. Jeremy had no idea what kind of woman he'd been betraying. What about Elise? I asked. What about her? She works in HR. If Jeremy goes down, won't she try to protect him? Amanda's expression darkened. Let me worry about Elise. I have plans for your wife, too. That afternoon, I was replacing a broken window at the university library when I saw Elise for the first time since she'd moved out. She was walking across the quad with her friend Sasha, both of them looking agitated. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told the story. Sasha was gesturing wildly, pointing at her phone. Elise kept shaking her head, her face pale with worry. They didn't see me watching from the second-floor window, but I had a perfect view as they stopped near the fountain in the center of the quad. Sasha showed Elise something on her phone, probably the video of Jeremy's dumpster dive, and Elise's reaction was everything I'd hoped for. She went white, then red, then white again. She grabbed Sasha's arm, saying something urgent. Sasha pulled away, shaking her head. They argued for several minutes before Elise stormed off, leaving Sasha standing alone by the fountain. That's when Sasha looked up and saw me in the window. For a moment, we stared at each other across the distance. Then Sasha raised her phone and took a picture of me. I waved. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Cal, it's Sasha. We need to talk. Do we? Meet me at the Starbucks on Elm Street in an hour. Trust me, you want to hear what I have to say. I almost hung up. Sasha had been Elise's closest friend for years, her partner in gossip and manipulation. But something in her voice made me curious. Why would you want to help me? Because Elise threw me under the bus, and I don't like being anyone's scapegoat. An hour later, I sat across from Sasha in a crowded Starbucks, wondering if I was walking into a trap. She looked different somehow, less polished, more human. The glossy veneer of the professional gossip was gone, replaced by something raw and angry. Elise told Jeremy that I was the one who left my scarf in his car, she said without preamble. She said I was trying to sabotage their relationship because I was jealous. Were you? Of Jeremy? God, no. That man is a walking cliché. But I was trying to protect Elise from making the biggest mistake of her life. Sasha pulled out her phone and scrolled through what looked like a massive collection of photos and videos. I documented everything, she said. Every lunch where Elise complained about you, every shopping trip where she bought lingerie for Jeremy, every time she lied about where she was going. I thought maybe if I showed her how pathetic she looked, she'd come to her senses. But she didn't. No. And when you confronted her, she blamed me. Said I was a terrible friend, that I'd betrayed her trust, that everything was my fault. Sasha's voice was bitter. 20 years of friendship, and she threw it away to protect a man who's been cheating on his fiancée with half the married women in town. So what do you want from me? Sasha smiled, and for the first time, I understood why she and Elise had been such good friends. They were both capable of breathtaking ruthlessness when crossed. I want to help you destroy them both, and I have exactly what we need to do it. She turned her phone toward me, and I saw a video that made my blood run cold. It was Elise and Jeremy in his apartment, and they weren't just having an affair. They were planning something. When did you record this? I asked. Last week. Elise thought I was in the bathroom, but I was listening at the door. Watch the whole thing. In the video, Jeremy was pacing around his living room while Elise sat on his couch looking worried. "We need to get rid of Cal," Jeremy was saying. "He's becoming a problem." "What do you mean, get rid of him?" "I mean, we need to make him go away permanently." "Jeremy, you're scaring me." "I'm not talking about anything violent, but there are ways to ruin a man's reputation, to make sure he can't find work, can't show his face in town. My father knows people, lawyers, judges, businessmen. One word from me, and Cal Porter becomes unemployable." Elise was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What would you need me to do?" "Just back up whatever story I tell. Say he threatened you, that you're afraid of him. File a restraining order if you have to. By the time we're done, everyone in town will think Cal Porter is a dangerous, unstable man." The video ended. I stared at the blank screen, feeling sick. "They were planning to frame you," Sasha said quietly. "Make you look like an abusive husband, so Jeremy could play the hero who saved Elise from a bad marriage." "Why are you showing me this?" "Because Elise needs to learn that actions have consequences. And because I want to watch her world burn." Sasha leaned across the table, her eyes bright with malicious intent. "The question is, are you ready to light the match?" I thought about 8 years of marriage, about the life Elise and I had built together, about the man I thought Jeremy was versus the man he really was. I thought about their plan to destroy my reputation, to make me unemployable, to turn me into a pariah in my own hometown. "What did you have in mind?" I asked. "The university's annual donor gala is tomorrow night. 500 of the most important people in town, including Jeremy's department head, the university president, and most of the major donors. Elise will be there in her professional capacity, and Jeremy will be there trying to network his way to tenure. And I'm going to make sure everyone sees exactly what kind of people they really are." Sasha's smile was absolutely carnivory. "By the time I'm done, Jeremy Linwood and Elise Porter won't be able to show their faces anywhere in this town." The university's annual donor gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Marriott, the same hotel where Jeremy had been conducting his affairs for months. The irony wasn't lost on me as I adjusted my tie in the men's room mirror, preparing for what would either be the most satisfying night of my life or a complete disaster. I wasn't supposed to be there. Handymen don't typically get invited to black tie fundraisers. But Amanda's father was one of the university's biggest donors, and she'd managed to get me added to the guest list as her date. Jeremy and Elise had no idea I was coming. "You clean up nice," Amanda said when I met her in the hotel lobby. She looked stunning in a black evening gown, every inch the sophisticated socialite. But I could see the hunter lurking beneath the polished surface. "Are you sure about this?" I asked. "Once we do this, there's no going back." "There was no going back the moment Jeremy decided to cheat on me with your wife and God knows how many other women." Her smile was ice cold. "Besides, Sasha's already in position." We walked into the ballroom together, and I had to admit it was impressive. Crystal chandeliers, elegant table settings, and 500 of the most powerful people in the city mingling over cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played softly in one corner while waiters circulated with champagne. I spotted Jeremy almost immediately. He was holding court near the bar, surrounded by a group of younger faculty members who hung on his every word. He looked confident, relaxed, completely unaware that his world was about to implode. Elise was across the room, working the crowd in her professional capacity. She wore a navy blue dress that I'd never seen before, probably bought specifically for this event with money from our joint account. She was smiling, shaking hands, playing the part of the competent university administrator. Neither of them had noticed me yet. "There's Sasha," Amanda murmured, nodding toward the far side of the room. Sasha was dressed as a server, complete with the hotel's uniform and a tray of champagne glasses. She'd somehow managed to get herself hired as temporary staff for the event, a trick that would have been impossible for anyone without her connections and determination. "Phase 1 begins in 10 minutes, Amanda said, checking her watch. "The university president always gives his welcome speech at 8:30. That's when we make our move." I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. "And you're sure this will work?" "Cal, I've been planning this for months. Every detail has been considered, every contingency accounted for. By the time this evening is over, Jeremy Linwood will wish he'd never heard the name Porter." At exactly 8:30, University President Dr. Robert Whitmore took the stage to give his annual welcome speech. The crowd quieted. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips, all attention focused on the distinguished man at the podium. That's when Sasha made her move. She approached Jeremy's group with her tray of champagne, playing the part of the invisible server. But instead of offering drinks, she set her tray down on a nearby table and pulled out her phone. "Excuse me, Professor Linwood," she said loudly enough for half the room to hear. "I have something I think you'll find very interesting." Jeremy turned, confused. He didn't recognize Sasha in her server's uniform, didn't understand why she was addressing him by name. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "Not personally, but I know you very well. I'm Sasha Chen, Elise Porter's best friend. Or rather, I was until she threw me under the bus to protect your affair." The conversations around them stopped. People turned to stare. Jeremy's face went white. "I think there's been some misunderstanding." "Oh, there's been a misunderstanding, all right. But it's yours, not mine." Sasha held up her phone, and suddenly the video she'd shown me at Starbucks was playing on the ballroom's main screen. The AV technician, another of Amanda's carefully placed allies, had connected Sasha's phone to the projection system. Jeremy's voice filled the room. "We need to get rid of Cal. He's becoming a problem." The crowd was transfixed. On screen, Jeremy paced around his apartment while Elise sat on his couch. "I mean, we need to make him go away, permanently." A collective gasp went up from the audience. Jeremy looked around desperately, realizing that 500 of the most important people in the city were watching him plot to destroy an innocent man's life. "Turn it off!" he shouted, lunging toward the AV booth. But the video kept playing. Elise's voice now. "What would you need me to do?" "Just back up whatever story I tell. Say he threatened you, that you were afraid of him. File a restraining order if you have to." I watched Elise across the room as she realized what was happening. The color drained from her face, and she started pushing through the crowd toward the exit. But Amanda was ready for that too. "Ladies and gentlemen," Amanda said, taking the microphone from the stunned university president, "I'd like you all to meet Jeremy Linwood, Associate Professor of English and my former fiancé. The man you just heard plotting to frame an innocent husband is the same man who's been using university credit cards to fund his affairs with married women." She nodded to Sasha, who switched the projection to a slideshow of Jeremy's financial records. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, jewelry purchases, all charged to his university account, all dated to correspond with his various affairs. "And here," Amanda continued as new photos appeared on screen, "are some of the married women Professor Linwood has been pursuing. Note the dates. Some of these relationships were concurrent. Jeremy's been quite the busy man." The photos showed Jeremy with at least 6 different women, including Elise. In restaurants, hotels, his apartment. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Jeremy tried to run, but the crowd blocked his path. Everyone wanted a closer look at the man who'd been exposed so thoroughly. Phones were out now, recording everything, ensuring that this moment would live forever on social media. "This is all lies," Jeremy shouted. "This woman is unstable. She's trying to ruin me because I broke up with her." That's when I stepped forward. "Actually, Jeremy, it's all true, and I have more evidence if anyone's interested." Jeremy spun around, seeing me for the first time. His face went from white to green. "You," he whispered. "Me," I agreed. "Cal Porter, the man you and my wife were planning to frame. The man whose life you wanted to destroy so you could steal his wife." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the projection system. New images appeared on screen. Photos Amanda and I had taken of Jeremy's apartment, showing gifts he'd given to various women, love letters he'd written, even a calendar where he'd scheduled his different affairs to avoid conflicts. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is what a hunter looks like," I announced to the crowd. "Jeremy Linwood has been systematically targeting married women, using his position at the university to gain their trust, then manipulating them into affairs. When their husbands started getting suspicious, he planned to frame them as abusive to cover his tracks." The crowd was getting ugly now. These were donors, alumni, respected members of the community. Many of them were married couples who saw themselves in Jeremy's victims. "Where's security?" someone shouted. "Call the police. Get him out of here." Jeremy looked around desperately, realizing he was completely surrounded. That's when he made his final mistake. He tried to blame Elise. "This is all her fault," he screamed, pointing across the room. "She seduced me. She told me her husband was abusive, that she needed protection. I was trying to help her. The crowd turned to look at Elise, who had been trying to slip out unnoticed. Caught in the spotlight, she froze like a deer in headlights. Is that true, Mrs. Porter? Dr. Whitmore asked, his voice carrying clearly across the now silent ballroom. Elise looked around the room, seeing 500 pairs of eyes staring at her with disgust and condemnation. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. So it is true, Dr. Whitmore said. You did have an affair with Professor Linwood. Yes, and you planned to file false charges against your husband to cover it up. Elise's shoulders sagged in defeat. Yes. The crowd erupted. Angry voices shouted accusations, demands for justice. Security finally arrived. But instead of removing Jeremy and Elise, they had to protect them from the outraged donors. I watched it all with a sense of profound satisfaction. 8 years of marriage, months of betrayal, weeks of planning, and it all came down to this moment. Jeremy and Elise, exposed and humiliated in front of everyone who mattered in their professional and social lives. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Whitmore said, retaking the microphone, I want to assure you all that the university will be conducting a full investigation into Professor Linwood's conduct. Any misuse of university resources will be dealt with severely. He paused, looking directly at Jeremy. Professor Linwood, consider yourself suspended pending a formal review. Security will escort you from the premises. Jeremy was led away, still protesting his innocence, still trying to blame everyone but himself. Elise followed, her head down, her career in ruins. As the crowd slowly returned to their conversations, Amanda appeared at my side. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it for a moment. I'd expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, satisfied. Instead, I felt something simpler and more profound. I felt free. Like I can finally move on with my life, I said. Amanda smiled. Good. Because Jeremy's suspension is just the beginning. By the time the university's investigation is complete, he'll be unemployable at any academic institution in the country. And Elise's career in university administration is over. What about you? What's next for Amanda Morrison? I'm moving to Boston. Fresh start, new job, new life. What about Cal Porter? I looked around the ballroom one more time, at the people who would be talking about this night for years to come, at the wreckage of 2 lives that had tried to destroy mine. I think Cal Porter is going to be just fine. 3 months later, I was installing custom cabinets in a beautiful house across town when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jeremy's number, a number I hadn't seen since the night of the gala. Hello, Jeremy, I said, not bothering to stop working. Cal, please, I need to talk to you. His voice was different, smaller, desperate, broken. I'm listening. I lost everything. The university fired me. Amanda took half my stuff when she moved out, and no one will hire me. I can't even get a job teaching high school. That's unfortunate. Please, Cal. I'm sorry, I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong, but I've paid for it. Can't we call it even? I set down my drill and really considered the question. Jeremy had lost his job, his reputation, his fiancée, and his future. Elise had been fired from the university and was working at an insurance office in the next town over. Their affair had ended the night of the gala. Apparently, there's nothing romantic about mutual destruction. Jeremy, I said finally, do you remember what you told Elise in that video about making me disappear permanently? Cal, I never would have actually. You destroyed my marriage. You tried to destroy my reputation. You were planning to make me unemployable in my own hometown. And you did it all because you thought I was beneath you, that I didn't matter, that I was just an obstacle to be removed. Jeremy was quiet on the other end of the line. So no, we're not even. We'll never be even. You got exactly what you deserved, and frankly, you got off easy. I hung up and went back to work. Through the window, I could see the lake, where Elise and I used to walk on Sunday mornings, back when I thought we had a future together. Now I walked there alone, and I preferred it that way. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Saw the news about Jeremy's lawsuit getting dismissed. How are you holding up? I smiled and typed back, never better, how's Boston? Perfect. New job, new apartment, new life. No regrets. Good for you. You deserve happiness. So do you, Cal. Don't forget that. I put my phone away and returned to my work. The cabinets were coming along beautifully, solid oak, custom fitted, built to last. The kind of work I took pride in. The kind of work that would outlast whatever drama was currently consuming the university crowd. Outside, it started to rain. I listened to the sound on the roof and thought about second chances, about the difference between justice and revenge, about the strange satisfaction that comes from watching your enemies destroy themselves. Jeremy Linwood and Elise Porter had tried to erase me from my own life. Instead, they'd erased themselves. And I was still here, still working, still building things that would last long after their names were forgotten. That night, I drove past our old house, my old house. The new owners had painted it yellow and planted flowers in the front yard. It looked happy, lived in, loved. Nothing like the cold, tense place it had become during those final months with Elise. I drove to the Rusty Anchor, where Ray was waiting with a beer and a grin. "So," he said as I sat down, "any regrets?" I thought about Jeremy's phone call, about Elise's new job in the next town over, about the life I'd lost and the life I was building. "None," I said, and meant it. Ray raised his beer. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I agreed. We drank in comfortable silence, two friends who'd weathered the storm and come out the other side. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean.